Hello and welcome to today's session, Take the Pain Out of Oracle ERP Cloud and HCM Periodic Access Reviews. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So the session will be recorded for on-demand viewing. All attendees are on mute, and if you do have any questions for our speakers today, feel free to pop those in the control panel and we'll get to those at the end of the session. So my name's Emma, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Luscombe today, CEO of Systems Risk Services, and Adil Khan, CEO of SafePass. And Matt and Adil will be sharing some great tips and recommendations on how to streamline the access certification process in Oracle ERP Cloud and HCM with some real examples and case studies. So this is the agenda we'll be following today. Diving into business drivers, why is it a challenge, essential capabilities you should look for in a solution, case study, and then Q&A at the end. So according to ISACA, user access review is a control to periodically verify that only legitimate users have access to applications or infrastructure. And access certification is part of the broader initiative of access governance. So, Adil, would you like to introduce yourselves before we get started briefly, and then we can dive into the session.
Sure, Matt, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Matt Luscombe. I work for Systems Risk Services. I've been spending the last 25 years, later this year, working around Oracle security controls, both as an implementer and an auditor. I have an idea of some of the pain that can be existing in clients that use Oracle E-Business Suite, and then more recently Oracle Cloud ERP and Cloud HCM, but also how can be implemented in a least painful way. Adil.
Thanks, Matt. Adil Khan, I'm the CEO here at SafePass, founder and CEO of SafePass. Our mission is to help companies reduce compliance and audit risks using technology, reliable technology that we build on our platform. And we're great to have folks like Matt work with us to help our customers become successful. And so I've been also in this industry for a long time. Was on the board of Oracle GRC SIG for many years, written a book called Oracle Governance, Risk and Compliance Handbook that was published back in 2012 with a colleague of mine from Oracle named Nigel King, who was the vice president of security and did a lot of the design for Oracle Cloud security. So you can blame him if you don't like the security. I'm also helped about 200 some companies around the world on 5 continents improve their internal controls using Oracle. So yeah, here to kind of help you share some of our stories, and hopefully these will help you improve controls in your business.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the session and talk about some of the business drivers for periodic access review, Adil.
Yeah, so as I said, I work with quite a few customers around the globe, and a majority of them in the US though. So my perception primarily is in the US. But yeah, so I think what I hear from our customers, what I'm going to share with you here in these bullet points, and you can read the bullet points. I'll just give you a little story behind each of those. So growing security from auditors, scrutiny from auditors, right? So we have seen PCAOB put some guidelines. The organization that essentially the oversight organization that was established as a result of Sarbanes Oxley back in 2002 by President Bush signing SOX into the law here in the US. So we've seen a number of directives come from PCAOB through SEC. And last year, for example, we saw more emphasis on completeness and accuracy around testing. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's one of the drivers we're seeing from our customers that are probably doing something, they're using spreadsheets or whatever, but they're looking at a more robust auditable solution. So that's a great reason for you to consider moving to a solution, or if you're even doing it manually, looking at putting some structure around it. And and Matt will get into it.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Adil, even for those that are not Sarbanes Oxley, I mean, I'm still seeing other of my clients where they're
right.
getting a little bit more of a poke from their auditors now around access. So things that they might have got away with a few years ago, even public sector and local government organisations where they don't have a Sarbanes Oxley requirement, etc., but they're still being asked, okay, show me that you have reviewed all of your access and it's still appropriate for those people.
Yeah, a very good point. And I hear the same from our customers all the way in South Africa. You being in UK, you're quite familiar with international customers as well. And what I hear from the audit firms too that I talk to is that good audit standards are, whether it's SOX or not, they're being applied across the markets to customers, just because all of us want to do a good job, and if there's some new ways of improving the quality of audit, we all want to adopt that. So great point, Matt, there.
Yep.
The other thing that's I think just changed over the last few years since COVID, I guess, is this hybrid work. I have an office at home that I work from often. I'm there today. I can see many of the people attending this might be working remotely, and so there's just that need to have a little more confidence around people having multiple devices, many more applications as part of the hybrid work. Also, I heard the term, bring your own device, but also bring your own app. So people are using more apps. And in the context of today's session, you may have some different ways of interfacing into Cloud ERP, which can post journal entries or ultimately have financial risk. So privileges that are granted are getting more complex. Matt and I have talked a lot about the quarterly patch process, and Matt, may you want to say something specific to Oracle as well, because that's a wave of I guess call it a burden that people didn't have to deal with in the on-premise world, right?
I agree. And whilst it shouldn't have hopefully very much impact on periodic access review, it may. It definitely needs to be thought about.
Right. Last 2 or 3 points, just to kind of wrap up the slide. Control access to meet audit standards established and expected. So yeah, that's just having good controls, good hygiene, right? Effective controls to make sure your provisioning, your deprovisioning, essentially your identity lifecycle is under good controls and good management, right? And it's different when you do it in cloud, because I grew up in the on-premise world, like many people that have been in this industry for a long time, and moving to cloud, we've learned a lot of new things, right? That to make cloud more efficient, more, I guess, agile. Many companies are using cloud to become more agile. There are quite a bit of things you can do, which creates, unfortunately, some risk. And so yeah, that's another area where customers are saying, okay, we want to meet our standards and improve the controls for certification than what we had. And in many cases, the hybrid environment, going back to that point, is not just the hybrid work, but also the hybrid technology, right? Because you may have things that are still on premise, and you have to take them into account. The last couple of points are really pretty standard around anybody that's doing things manually. The pain points. We don't have to drill into it, but you definitely, spreadsheets tend to be more complex to manage, even with the best of us. Being the Excel jocks, pivot tables and all that still gets hard at some point when data changes, underlying data changes. And then last point is, Matt can comment more than I can on the data privacy, the need for having, especially in GDPR in Europe, has been a big concern. So it's also just kind of keeping those keys to the kingdom away from the people that don't need it, right? It's from what I know about GDPR, it's least privilege, kind of a philosophy around it. Matt?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the requirements around GDPR is to make sure that only appropriate people have access to data. Well, okay,
Right.
part of that, if you're talking about GDPR, you're talking about personal identifiable information. That could include HR records, clearly, or payroll, but it also will include things like suppliers and customers, where you've got individuals are either suppliers or customers. So you need to make sure that on a periodic basis that is still appropriate.
Makes sense. Okay.
And so why
So
is
the
it
idea is
such
hopefully you can use these points and correlate them to your organization and see if these resonate with the folks in your teams to create a business case for access certification.
Yeah. So why is it such a challenge in Oracle ERP Cloud and HCM, Matt?
So Oracle gives you a couple of starting points. So one of those is the user role membership report. So this shows a list of roles that are assigned to users, which is great. But you'll see on the little screen print that I've tried to include, depending on how big your screen is, any one user role assignment might be split over multiple lines. So in this particular example, there's a user that ends in 881. It says staring at his screen for the sample client AP manager. But that's all those 6 rows are all one single role assignment. So at that point, you're going to end up having to not only download it, but you're going to have to manipulate it by deleting the policy stripe, which is column G, and then removing duplicate records if you're going to do it all within Excel. Well, that's still fine, but you then need to document your process to provide assurance over the completeness and accuracy. How do you prove to people that you've not accidentally or intentionally removed lines from your spreadsheet so that somebody else can go back and re-perform this if they want to? Now, for those organizations that have just a single ledger, a single business unit, that might be fine. But what we find is that quite often organizations that have global organizations, they have multiple business units or multiple ledgers. Well, you then typically, unlike say in eBusiness Suite, where you might have before in the days before multi-org access control, you probably would have created a different responsibility for each country around the world and then link them off to the organizations or ledgers. No, in Oracle Cloud ERP in particular, you would have it limited to just you'll have a single role, and then that will cover everybody around the world, and you'll use the data access security to link it to those. Now, that creates a challenge for access certifications because certainly for some of the clients that Adil and I work on together, their global reviewers, well, they don't have a single reviewer that's going to know everybody around the world. So if you've got people in the US and UK and other parts of the world, do they really know whether or not that role is appropriate? Which is really what the whole point of access certification is, verifying the appropriateness of any one role assignment. Now, once again, Oracle gives you another report, so you can export the data access, and then you can then link it with the user role membership report and combine it. But there are a few challenges around that. So if I revoke a role within Oracle Cloud itself, it does not revoke the data access from that user role assignment. So you end up with orphaned lines. Equally, not all data access assignments are high risk, particularly for report. So quite often our clients use secondary ledgers for reporting, where they'll have a primary ledger and a functional currency of the local, might be GBP, but if they're part of a group that has to report in USD, for example, they might have a secondary ledger for translating their balances into USD. Well, in itself, the secondary ledger is not necessarily going to be high risk. I might be able to have access to it to be able to view the information, but I'm not going to put an AP invoice directly into my secondary ledger, for example. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about having to sign off all of those data access assignments. Equally, there are other challenges around, I might have roles that are used by service accounts, where they might have access to every single ledger around the world, every single business unit around the world. Do I really want to review every single one of those role assignments, every single data access for that particular user role assignment? Not really, because that could end up with hundreds of lines, even for areas where I think it is high risk, so the primary ledgers, the business units, etc. No, there needs to be a more sensible solution that doesn't involve looking at every single line. And so really, the way that Oracle Cloud is set up is also slightly inconsistent for HCM as well, because HCM doesn't have the concept of data security. It just HCM uses data security, but not data access security. I know that's a semantic for many people, but it's actually a completely different security approach, and that impacts on access reviews as well if you've got a combined ERP and HCM system. Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick up here. So I know that that's a common concern that you and I are dealing with cloud ERP customers together, and you've helped us come up with some better ways of doing that. I guess people might be wondering, how would you go about putting together a solution where you can make it more risk-based, Matt? Like, certain things like secondary ledger, for example, may not be required. So, I mean, do you have some guidance for our people that are listening in to help them sort out through this? Yeah, that might be helpful too.
I think to me that the first step is to identify what are the security contexts, what are the data access that are actually in use. There's about 10 or 15 security contexts that are seeded by Oracle. You can't change them. And then on top of that, you'll then define your own security context values for those. So, and for each of those to then go through and say, is this high risk? And if we put it in scope, how many extra lines am I going to end up having to review? But also, do I have an approach that allows me to take plan B for ones that are out-the-box roles that are used by service accounts, but I know I've got loads of mitigating controls. Not ideal, but most clients unfortunately do have that approach. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right, Adil. It needs to be risk-based so that I'm not necessarily reviewing every single line.
Yeah.
But
so look, compliance is not about just creating more work. It's also about reducing some work, and that's a great example where we take a, if you talk to Matt, he'll show you an approach that fits your specific organization.
So for example, employee roles and line manager roles, they are usually auto-provisioned to all employees and line managers based on something called HCM role provisioning rules. Well, if it's automatically provisioned based on my HR record, why would I want to review that as part of an access review? Because it's not manually assigned, it's being assigned directly by Oracle itself.
Right.
So I mean, for many organizations, there will be plenty of people that are employees and that's it. If they have, particularly if they use HCM.
Yeah. Yeah, because every employee has an ID, and it's not like they're posting journal entries all day long.
Nope. So I don't really want to have to sign off thousands of lines just because they're employees.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about a case study that later on in the presentation. So stay tuned for more information on how we deal with these situations. But you can see that it's pretty daunting to do this in a spreadsheet and get it right.
It is. So what are the essential capabilities that they should look for in a solution?
So yeah, let's take a look at it. I mean, this is where we spend a lot of time at SafePass thinking about how to build good software that's reliable, that's self-service. Our customers want, less overhead on compliance and audit. They want to get their audit right. They want to have it so there's good visibility. And these are some of the key capabilities. If you're out in the market, whether you're talking to SafePass or anybody else, this is what our clients are asking for. And so this is a cheat sheet for you to help build your own requirements, essentially, right? Learning from what we have seen in the market and what we heard from our customers. So what customers want, tell us that they want is sort of an intuitive way to this whole process. Look, we can do this in a spreadsheet, but as I mentioned, it's complicated and it gets really difficult to control the errors in a spreadsheet. So to keep it accurate and complete, you want to have simple dashboards where you can track status or where you are. What a lot of customers complain to us about is the amount of chasing it takes to get things done, especially if you're spread across multiple locations or you have a hybrid work environment. You don't have everybody sitting in the same office for most of our customers, so you can't just walk up to the desk. So intuitive review and certification dashboards are really important. Reminders, escalations, all of those workflow capabilities that you expect as an enterprise customer of Oracle. You want to be able to see the same kind of capabilities in your certification tool, whether it's SafePass or whatever you select. So that's kind of number one, that you want to have good control over the whole overall process of certification. The other point that I move from left to right, top row there. The second item is consolidated controls and management of those controls administration. So you may have multiple applications. Oracle may be just one of them. And if it's only Oracle, great, your problem is solved. But if you have multiple applications that are in scope for your audit, then you want to be able to see them all in one dashboard in one place. And you want a solution that can show you all the controls in one place, because that's what your auditors will also test for. And being able to manage it all from the same central location helps. So that's sort of the other key important point that comes up. The third point is that closed loop approach. So what I often hear from our customers is that, yeah, we sent out them emails and I think they did something, but the question is that, well, how do you know it actually occurred? So let's say, you went through a spreadsheet or whatever approach you have. You went through role and user assignments, and let's say you've done all those hygiene points that we discussed in the previous time. So you've done your security context right. You've looked at the risk. You've eliminated all the employees, as Matt said, and you only have these key high-risk roles assigned to users that you're reviewing. Well, the problem still remains is that at the end of that review, what's the deliverable, right? Is it just another spreadsheet or a report, even a report from a system that shows you what should be removed, or is it actually ensuring that the risk is remediated timely by actually providing the evidence that that access was taken away? So let's say we found that Emma had access to General Ledger in Spain, but she really is in marketing. She shouldn't have that access, and I'm her as manager. I put a request in to take that out. That remediation has to be evidenced independently by an independent auditor that occurred. Otherwise, it's just a waste of everybody's time, right? So that's what I mean by closed loop, and that's really important to our customers and our auditors. The last item, obviously, is to integrate that, which sort of feeds into my previous point, that if you have a IT service management system, you have information in there. So now you're going to have to duplicate that. You're going to put the request in our system or whatever system you have, a spreadsheet, and then you're going to have to go create a ticket and then monitor that ticket. If you're using a provisioning system, like let's say an identity governance system or IAM system, it has a lot of useful information in there. Even your AD Active Directory, right? Like who's the manager of that employee? When were they first granted access? What's the current department they work in? And who approved the last access? So I think one of the, for more of your more mature organizations. So we have this maturity model for access governance that you guys should look at. But that level 3 is where most customers are today. But to move to a level 4 or a level 5, which is optimized and repeatable, right? Using the CMM terminology, that's where our level 4 customers are, and they're moving to level 5, is where they can automatically leverage the tools they have in place to generate the tickets, make sure that that remediation action is performed, and then provide verification through an audit analytics that has happened. So now you are at a more mature level where your processes around access management are more streamlined versus having to go across these different islands of technology, right? So that's kind of the top 4 things on the top. The bottom 4, obviously everybody wants to reduce the burden around audit fatigue, having good insight into your current state. What's very stressful is your deadline is approaching and you still have 50% of your work outstanding, right? And then what do you do if you're spread out? So being able to have good risk intelligence and looking at where you are in the process, drilling down into it, and maybe escalating items to the management where you're not getting the responses. It may sound like a simple day-to-day operating procedure, but it's difficult to do because of all those elements that we just talked about that make up the certification, right? So that having that burden lifted is important. Also, you can prevent ITGC, IT general control failures by taking a fine-grained look at it. So a number of our customers have been doing that. They've moved from spreadsheets into some sort of a tool, but the tool has this concept of reviewing the roles in the business context. So they may be using, let's say, ServiceNow, where they have created these abstract roles. So finance manager gets a number of let's say GL, AP, AR roles within Cloud ERP. But what people are certifying today is that finance manager, and the auditors coming in and saying, well, what does that mean when you say finance manager has access? What have you understood? So being able to go fine-grained, and it's up to you what level you want to go. You can also go too much, right? So you have to dial it up or down. And folks like Matt can help you based on your organization size, risk, and so forth, on where the right level is for you. You want to chat on that?
Sorry, the only thing I was going to say on that one is that it might be supposed to be provisioned via ServiceNow or another tool, but there's still always going to be the back door. And that's the challenge. If you just do it at a ServiceNow level, you're not going to pick up that somebody has assigned a role directly within Oracle Cloud via Security Console, via HCM data loader, via the REST APIs, etc. Like all of the backdoors that Oracle have allowed in to do provisioning.
Very good point. Yeah, so this is a key source of findings that's very useful to know. Yeah. Okay, so just kind of wrap up this slide and try to stay on track for the time. Rapid deployment, that's something customers demand today in the cloud for anything, right? To be able to get the solution up and running fast. And I think if you've been there, done that, it's easier to rinse and repeat. Now, each customer is different. Your requirements are different. Your risk profile is different. So it's not one size fits all. But I think having dealt with lots of situations and scenarios like Matt and I have over the 25 years or so, it helps you just kind of contextualize that and make sure that you're making good decisions to incorporate this process or enhance the process you already have. And the last point on the bottom slide, on the bottom row of that slide, is global roles entitlement management. So it's becoming more and more important where companies are, kind of introducing multiple application, a sort of a best of breed. So we had this trend in the 90s to move everything to kind of a centralized monolithic ERP system. But we learned, a decade ago that for customer management, we need a dedicated CRM system. For procurement, we need a dedicated procurement system. ERPs are great to centralize and house the information, but as we are building these additional point solutions around the organization or best of breed solutions, I think the importance of global roles entitlements become important, because you may be doing procurement in Ariba or Coupa or something like that, depending what you have. You may be doing your customer management, a lot of the activities, and something like Salesforce, let's say. Your HR might be in Workday. So we're seeing that combination. And for those customers that have best of breed around their ERP, cloud ERP, Oracle ERP, that's something to consider as well. You work a lot with roles, Matt. Help customers advise on how to build good roles. I mean, what do you think would be helpful here?
Yeah, I think there's the bit around making sure you have the appropriate set of roles for your business, but not too many, and really knowing what's in them. So, I mean, all of the out-the-box roles come with a whole heap of pain. Doesn't necessarily impact access certification as much, but will absolutely cause an unbelievable amount of pain for segregation of duties, which we'll talk about in a couple of months' time at the next webinar. So you definitely want to try and get rid of the out-the-box roles. You definitely want to try and replace them with a cut-down version that are clean, segregated. But then it comes down to operating model. It comes down to making sure that your teams actually support the requirements around segregation of duties, or that you've documented your mitigating controls and they're actually operating effectively. And I think around access certification itself, there's a couple of things that I'd probably add to this around whatever you're using. Even if it's a spreadsheet, you need to make sure there are access controls around the responses. So you need to make sure that you can be absolutely certain that if somebody has signed something off, that either positively or negatively, that then doesn't get edited by someone else, and you need to be able to prove that. But also you might need more than one person to review any one role assignment. So there might be somebody that sits as a local team member, but actually there might be somebody else that needs to sit above them as the line manager to say, well, wait a minute, okay, you might need that for that reason, but actually I don't think you need that for a different reason. And that becomes difficult to manage through things like spreadsheets.
Great points, thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, next we have the case study. Adele, do you want to talk us through the case study?
Yeah, so we try to, every customer we engage with, our goal is to build kind of a lessons learned slide that we can share with other customers and ourselves internally to get better at what works, what success looks like, what's the outcomes we should be driving towards. And so this is a simplified version of it. I'll spend a little bit of time on talking high level. And again, these are the kind of things you want to really have one-on-one discussions with folks like Matt and myself and our teams to really drill into it. So, because obviously it's confidential and we can't publicly disclose a lot of the return on investment type details here, but we'll be glad to share those with you in more detail. So we picked an example of a recent customer where Matt and I have collaborated, our teams have collaborated, and we picked a global household brand that is well recognized across the globe. I'm not overstating that. I don't think in 100 different countries.
No, I agree.
Yeah, you probably have seen their logos as you drive or walk or bike. And they had a mandate to move to cloud, and they chose Oracle ERP Cloud to be that solution. They have hundreds of applications, by the way. It's just cloud is their main, obviously ERP that they're moving to. And they're moving, just so you know, they're moving from Oracle, ultimately from Oracle eBusiness Suite, although cloud has many more, I guess, use cases for them. They also are a big user of ServiceNow and SailPoint. So I'm just giving you the very brief version of the footprint. There's a lot more. It's a complex organization with lots of things happening at once. So when they came to us, the challenges were around lack of visibility around this periodic access review process, as many of you may call it, or the access certification process as well. So yeah, I mean, the problems were that they were doing it in spreadsheets, and the external auditor had raised some concerns around their, the quality of evidence that was coming out of spreadsheets. I'll just keep it at a high level. And they had some issues with the spreadsheets. And what was making the problem worse is that they couldn't reperform the control. That's very important for independent auditors to be able to go and reperform the control. So even though you have a compliance layer of defense, you have internal audit line of defense, ultimately external auditors want to be able to do that. And that was a challenge for them. And obviously, since they were doing a lot of things offline, they were doing some things online in one of their tools too. But that online tool itself had even made the problem worse because, as I mentioned before, they were doing it at an abstract role level, which by itself wasn't quite sitting, perfectly with the roles. And so as they were moving to this new platform, transforming to a cloud, they felt like, this would be an area to make improvements in. And so that's where we engage with them. So you can see there's lots of different technologies. And as a result, they have elevated risk, right? When they went with Oracle Cloud, they also recognized the importance of service accounts. They're a great technology innovation for us to be able to, integrate companies' accounts, all that information we need to have at our fingertips. But at the same token, it introduces tremendous amount of risk. And I want Matt to talk a little bit about the risk in service accounts, because that's an area that, Matt, I know you spent a lot of time guiding us on how to avoid, especially in Oracle Cloud. If you want to say a few words there.
Yeah, no, so I mean, typically the way that people get handed it by their systems integrators, their implementers, is that without being mean to some of my friends at integrators, they get handed for the easiest route, the quickest route possible to implement, which is they're going to give you a whole heap of out-the-box accounts because they know they work, and it's a bit difficult to work out what they genuinely need as the minimum required privileges. So quite a lot of the work that I've ended up doing in the past couple of years is starting to unpick some of that. So literally down to which processes do they need to be able to run? What are the integrations that they are running? What privileges do I need, therefore, to run those? And what we, at this particular organization, we chopped out and we created a couple of custom roles for service accounts that, well, every single service account has got its own custom role apart from one, where that is the main integration. And for that one, we put in a whole heap of mitigating controls that stop anybody from actually logging in and using it instead. So therefore, we are reducing the risk of fraud for every other service account and mitigating the risk of fraud for the one main one. But at other organizations, I've successfully killed everything. So in terms of security and access problems, not in terms of integrations, I probably should point out. So we managed to cut one particular individual account from, it was triggering about 3,000 segregation duties violations before. It now triggers 0. Still works in exactly the way it needs to. Yeah. But it just doesn't have all of the extra privileges because we've done the extra work to work out what is the minimum.
Right. And that's where I think we really value, Matt, your background with audit too, because this is where, if we don't do these kinds of things, it ends up, in the worst case, in audit committee at the board level, right? Because
the worst case is that
bring it up.
People make changes via the service account. They're not monitored because they assume that it's an integration, and I can get away with changing bank accounts. I get away with doing transactions that
you can actually have materialized fraud as well. Yeah, very good point.
because all of the integrations that they're all updates versions.
Yeah.
They're not just read only the way that Oracle provides it.
So yeah, so watch out. I mean, you've got a very powerful Formula One car, but you can wreck it very fast. Thanks for that insight. Yeah, so I mean, given that regulatory environment we're in, these kinds of new innovations and technologies needs to be judged against it, whether it's everybody's talking about AI and Chat GPT and how to regulate that. But even the basics, ERP's been around forever, right? But even you can see that ERP needs those controls that Matt just outlined on service accounts, and there's many aspects. So this was a big challenge in moving to this cloud ERP for the customer with these new capabilities, this new power, this new capability needed to be controlled and regulated. And the last piece is challenges around the transformation itself, because there's something that I want to just kind of have you guys hear from Matt also, is because when you move to the cloud and your security model is different than what you had, you have new consideration. I know we talked about security context in the past, but I mean, how you grant roles to people in Australia versus UK versus US is different, right, Matt? I mean, compared to how you did in EBS world.
Oh, yeah, in EBS, you hoped that you had a global solution and global team that were controlling access. But I mean, there are many more ways that I can get roles assigned to me via in Oracle Cloud. And that could be that they are auto-provisioned. It could be that somebody is manually assigning them. It could be that there's an integration that is doing it for me. It could be that I'm using HCM data loader to bulk upload, particularly for cutovers and new go lives, etc. I think around the bottom one, there's also a challenge around the controls itself, because typically the control itself will still have to operate over a period of time. So you suddenly now need to think about, when am I going to implement a new approach to access review and still meet my controls requirements that are going to be on a periodic basis, typically 6 monthly, but maybe quarterly, depending on the roles being reviewed.
Right. Yep. So let's talk about the solution a little bit. I think you're getting into that, Matt, as well. Yep. So the solution obviously was for them to look at the products they have purchased from us, SafePass, and see how they can implement and deploy them to meet these challenges, right? And one of the things and I'll go into a little bit on the product side now for those of you that are potentially looking at automation. So many products are out there that can, basically automate the high-level workflow. As I mentioned previously, the challenge is when you're selecting a solution is, does it really get me the outcome I want, right? Which means, do I have less risk after I've run through this product? And this customer wanted us to make sure we solve the problem of these multiple methods of provisioning that happen. I think, Matt, you talked a little bit about that. But you can have it coming from SailPoint, you can have it coming through ServiceNow, you can have it coming from direct, even an email from the CFO. Hey, I need this access for my new whatever advisor. So you have many different sources on how access is coming into your cloud ERP. And so the challenge and the solution we provided customer was integration into AD, into Azure, into all these sources where there are pieces of information that are critical in the certification process. And the mandate from the customer is, look, I want a solution that's self-service. I don't want to have to babysit it and just move the spreadsheets over to a tool that I have to babysit the tool then. I really want this tool to be streamlined and self-supporting, so to lower the cost of management. Customer has outsourced a lot of these functions to third-party providers. So there's hard dollars that are going out, and there's definitely an ROI of automation here, right? So there's the business case for you. So by integrating them, we are able to provide a solution that when the ticket is generated, when the termination request is sent to us in SafePass, we actually create a ticket through SafePass into ServiceNow. And that's a post function that we support, a special format that gets all posted there. It also provides some hints and routing that the customer has in place, so it's configurable. So if they're going with Cloud ERP versus a different product that they want to use this for, that routes to the right data specialist that can deprovision or control or change that access. So that's an important piece of the solution that is often overlooked. But however, that's not all, right? There's also the confirmation that that ticket is actually performed by the data specialist. So we're going deep into this process and providing our customer the total solution where they can evidence the fact that some data specialist in ServiceNow performed that duty, they close the ticket, and then we can see that request for removing a role from a user has been completed. But that's by itself, the auditors wanted further confidence that, okay, how do I know from the ERP, Cloud ERP, that role has actually been removed from that user without doing another certification, right? You don't want to tie down your organization with certifications all year long. So we also provided them this audit analytics capabilities, Access Audit Analytics, where they can see, what's in my ServiceNow status in the ticket, what's in SafePass, and what's in the Cloud ERP itself. So for some reason, if the ticket was closed incorrectly, in other words, the role was not actually removed for whatever reason, because these systems aren't integrated, right? SafePass is integrated, so it brings in all that information into an audit hub where the auditors, internal auditors, can perform their testing and verify that access has actually been removed from that user. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I just think that saves many hours of some poor person having to raise all of the tickets to remove access in the first place and make sure that they're all consistent. And then saves many more hours reconciling to prove that what should have been taken away has actually been taken away.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, there's we always consider our ROIs as part of our solution offering to our customers. So if you're thinking about where the savings will be, this is a key area that Matt talked about just a minute ago. Okay, so automated access certification by application is another important point. So while we're talking today about the cloud, the customer has on-premise applications too, and that may not be relevant to you today, but you might have some other applications that are running with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and they may be in scope for your certification. In this case, they were, so we also provided the same capability and solution with slightly different workflows, obviously, because they're different people doing those types of things. So that's also possible. I'm seeing many of our customers that are buying Oracle Cloud are also buying Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for moving some of those customizations or other interfaces and so forth onto OCI. And so that's definitely, if that's the scope, we can support that beyond that point solution of Oracle Cloud, right? It's really an enterprise solution we're trying to offer to the market here that scales with your business growing and changing. Integrated corrective actions, I think I've emphasized that enough. So that's a big part of that automation. So yeah, that's kind of the solution footprint. There's lots of other solutions this customer has adopted, but we wanted to stay focused on access certification today. The last, so what did they get out of doing all this investment and time that we spent on it? So the success and the benefits that you can take away from this case study is around, the lowering that audit burden, right, by streamlining your access certification process, making it more self-service, making it more visible for folks that are involved in this process. So let's talk about who's involved in the process. Certainly, we've talked a lot about the auditors and the compliance folks, but it's the people that are in different departments, right, that are responsible for certain roles. You can call them role managers, right? So if I'm working in Australia in a finance department, I might be responsible for the the finance roles that are in my market, and I'm responsible for reviewing them quarterly, semi-annually, whatever your frequency is. And so make it easy on them so they can see, not only the what am I certifying, but also what is that role makeup like, and when was the history of the role like, when was it granted? Because often when you go live with a new system like Oracle Cloud ERP, you may have reason, or, business reasons to give people more privileges that don't really need that on an ongoing basis on a business as usual level. So you may find that the level of detail you need to be able to make those decisions requires you to know what you provisioned, where did that provisioning request come from. And so that was a big benefit to the customer by having that visibility to be able to see, what resources are still available to the users and do they really need them. If there's any excessive privileges that were granted early on in the project or for a special need, that they can be quickly remediated. And having that confidence through the closed loop consolidation and closed loop approach where they can see what they've certified. So one interesting problem I felt like was a big benefit for this customer was they used a lot of third-party contractors for managing their Oracle Cloud ERP environment. And so for them, it was really important to, because some of the people that are certifying in the company don't know all the contractors that are working. That's often a problem I hear from enterprise customers that outsource service management pieces, right? So they're able to route those requests, download them, or route them to folks in these contractor organizations, managed service organizations that are supporting the customer, right? So the closed loop can become a little more complex. So for this customer, that was a big win to be able to meet that requirement. Anything else you'd like to add, Matt, that you think is a good success here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all having it all in one place. Like all the results are in one place. You can easily certify that everything was received, and there's a SOC 1 Type 2 report that covers the process that it goes through. So
right.
there's confidence that the information has not been tampered with.
Okay, so hopefully this helped you connect on how you can take this information to your organization, identify similar challenges, look at solutions and the benefits you might receive to help you create a business case. Okay, let's move on.
Yep, so I think in the interest of time, I will go on to the Q&A if that's okay. And if anybody does want to copy the deck, then we can send that across to them. So first question.
Sounds good.
What type of access certification is best suited to my needs? Who wants to take a stab at that one?
I'm happy to. Yeah. I mean, depending on your type of regulatory requirements, depending on the size of your organization, there are many options. So spreadsheets are an option. If it is a single business unit, a single ledger, you don't have complexity, it's all in a single site, you have a reasonably small team and you actually know the people, then they're probably fine. If you have a more regulatory requirement, I mean, typically for the clients that Adil and I have worked together, I mean, they have a requirement to do a review of all role assignments at least 6 monthly. Okay, that starts to become a big process then if you're going to go down the spreadsheet route, because you're going to be managing responses and dealing with the responses, and that's the bit that's going to take the time. Like particularly the first time, it's going to be a big effort to get everyone to reply, and then take everyone's access away when they realise that they didn't realise that people even had that role.
Do you want to add anything, Adil?
Yeah, sorry, I think I lost the audio for a second there. So I was wondering if there's any other questions. I think Matt answered that pretty well.
Okay, yes, next question. How often should we conduct user access reviews?
Matt, go ahead.
I think, yeah, I think it's going to depend on your organization. So typically, you're going to end up doing it once every 6 months would be fair. In practice, some organizations will have what they might call higher risk roles. That might be the IT security managers, that might be the ones that have configuration access because they sit in support teams, etc. And those ones might be reviewed every quarter, for example. And I mean, what we found, one of the benefits of SafePass is that you can put different roles in different groups and then trigger surveys based on frequency, based on those groups.
You know, one thing just to add to that, Matt, is that we also kind of learned something. I learned something that the categorization of high risk roles, right? That's not out of the box, right? So we had to tweak, and we have configurations in our tools, so where we had to kind of recognize that, and we're still sort of, honestly, it's still work in progress. But that's a very important lesson for me that we learned here at SafePass, that just to kind of build on Matt's point, is that the software that we build should be able to handle that, classification based on risk.
Yeah, and it might be that you link it with other areas. So, for example, anything that triggers an SID violation, a segregation of duties violation, maybe that's high risk. And
that's true, yeah.
That's
ultimately. And I think that did come up actually, yeah.
Indeed.
Okay, I'm moving down the list here. Let's see. How can we ensure effective continuous monitoring and auditing in the certification process?
So to me,
if you want to lead that, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to come from a product standpoint since I heard the word automation, and then you can fill in. My ears perk up when I hear that word. The piece that from a monitoring and auditing perspective continuously is the audit analytics that I touched on. So folks that are interested in seeing how the process is going are those folks that are responsible, quote unquote, for the overall program. So these are typically people in compliance and audit. So from a monitoring perspective, we have built some special dashboards. But monitoring by itself, to be honest, is not enough, because just because you're monitoring a Titanic running into a glacier, iceberg is not good enough. You have to change the direction, right? So the workflow has to be underneath all this. You have to be able to escalate things as part of monitoring. So what we have built is the ability to certainly monitor the full dashboard. And depending on your role, there's security comes into this too, because if you're thinking automation, you also think about who can see what, right? So if I'm the approver or certifier in Australia, I can only see my domain in Australia. But if I am the global person responsible, I want to be able to see all certifications. So there's that aspect of monitoring that you should consider. And we certainly provide that level of security and drill down. So yeah, so you can, kind of see the problem at your level, where you sit in the organization and your responsibilities, but also from a standpoint of escalation. So if you don't see something, you say something, as we often say, you can send out alerts, you can know more, elevate the level at which, so you can meet your deadlines. Audit is a lot about timeliness and completeness. So, being able to do that complete work on a timely basis. And also auditors who typically come at the end of this process, right? They're not participating, they're not a participant to this process. They come at the end, but often by the time they come, it's too late. So we give you some abilities to do on-the-fly reviews through audit analytics it's a separate module in SafePass called Safe Insight. You'll learn more about it. But yeah, that gives you the auditors that power to see, at a point in time, is it going in the right direction? Or do I need to go and talk to the compliance folks or management to say, hey, you kind of missed this big piece. You need to rerun the scope or do whatever. So obviously we don't let that ever happen, because with folks like Matt in the process, he's ensuring that everything gets done right from the beginning to end, but that visibility is there for continuous auditing to see. Where I think it really becomes even more useful for auditors is comparison. You know, we do a lot of trend analysis, period-to-period reviews. You know, what was it like the other day, the last period versus this period, right? And Matt and I just had a chat the other day about that. Like, okay, what was the risk in the last time we ran it versus this time? So that's the other area where you might want to consider continuous auditing, is to do that comparison on what's changed, because we rolled out a new business unit, we added more roles, we rolled out a new functionality, whatever that is. Oh, sorry, Matt, I overspoke. You want to close the meeting with your final thoughts?
No, I think to me, it's about making sure that you know what your exceptions are. So which roles am I not including in the access review and why? And having a justification. Which roles have not yet been reviewed by somebody? Okay, how do I then chase them? Which roles were wanting to be taken away? Okay, great. I mean, if there's no roles ever being wanted to be taken away, they're probably not doing a great job, because there's always going to be somebody that has some access that needs to be taken away if you get up to a reasonable size organization. Or then it's not using it as an opportunity for improvement. And then it's about, okay, I've requested that to take away. Show me the evidence that it was taken away. Prove to me that it has. And then wrap it all up so in a report that I can export that shows me these are the roles that were assigned, these are the roles that were reviewed, these are the roles that were suggested for taken away, there's the evidence that they've taken away.
Yep, that's a key part of the artifacts that you want to share with your auditors. Great point, Matt.
Yep.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the session. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us, and a huge thank you to Matt for sharing his insight along with Adele there. So we hope you found the session insightful. If anybody would like a copy of the deck, then please get in touch. And we look forward to welcoming you to the next in our Oracle ERP Cloud series, which is on March 21st, I think. Yeah, March 21st, which will be a case study in best practices, segregation of duties, optimization. So a big thanks to everyone, and any closing words from us today?
Nope, thank you very much.
Okay, thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.